And hello again, everybody, and welcome to our latest edition of Making Waves, our weekly look at Roosevelt University athletics. Joined this week, as always, by our producer and director, Camden Schuchaskie. Cam, a lot going on, which is the case pretty much most weeks when we get together for our podcast, but kind of now moving the transition from winter sports to spring sports, basketball wrapping up this weekend, now moving into, as we said, the spring sports with baseball and softball and volleyball now getting into full swing.
Yeah, shift in the seasons. Obviously, like you said, the basketball season's finally concluding. The golf team is back at it. They're in action this week. Of course, like you said, the volleyball team starting conference play this past weekend with an exciting matchup that we'll talk plenty about. But yeah, the baseball, softball season, both on spring break down in Florida last week, playing lots of games. So like you said, fully, flipping the calendar into the spring schedule, and I couldn't be more excited.
Looking back a little bit at basketball, wrapping up the season, women's basketball able to make it to the quarterfinal round. Tough ball game, not able to win that quarterfinal game. Had a great performance early. They were really on fire to start that ball game, but in the end, just succumbing to the number 2 seed in Wayne State.
Yeah, and Wayne State's a really good team. That has to be said at the forefront. Of course, it's hard to beat the team 3 times. And Wayne State was able to beat Roosevelt all 3 times they played this season, but like you said, they were right there in that first half, that first quarter especially, and it's kind of felt like that's kind of how the season went at a lot of times for the Roosevelt women's basketball team. It feels like they're able to compete for the most part with any team in the conference. It's just, a lot of times they run into that one quarter where the ball's just not, going into the basket, and they find themselves down bigger, and they dig themselves a hole, and sometimes they're able to claw their way back. We saw a couple times this season. I remember back in December, one of their first conference matchups, they had a really nice fight with Michigan Tech. But overall, yeah, a season where you're happy you got into the conference tournament. And, of course, knowing the players on that team, knowing Coach Deion Thomas, they're going to use that as a springboard and hopefully continue to progress as we head into the next season.
I definitely thought there was progression from last year. Great accomplishment last year. Lakers were able to get into the conference tournament in their first year ever as an NCAA Division II and GLIAC team. They were the number 8 seed this year. They were able to get to the number 7 seed, and for a while there, they had a chance to be as high as 5 down the stretch there late in the season. So you can definitely tell that there is progress being made for the team.
Absolutely, like you said. I mean, you see it, visually with that number 8 seed versus number 7 seed. And like you said, they were right in it until the very end, fighting for that 5 seed. And so I think that this is a team that is going to return every player next season. They didn't have a senior on the team. You're starting 4 juniors. And of course, you have an individual like Marie Outlay. I think a lot of times you look at basketball teams especially, and you have that one star on the court. You want a player who you feel like when you step onto the court, you have the best player on your team. And I think that, especially going into next season, Roosevelt's going to be able to feel that a lot of times. Of course, on the defensive side, we know how good she is, but offensively, she had a good year. And on the glass, she had the best year of her career, averaging somewhere around 6 rebounds a game, a career high. And, in your conversations with, Coach Deion Thomas throughout the course of the season, that was kind of a challenge that he issued to her. And she took it in full stride, and an excellent season for her. But, of course, Kelly Boyle, Isabella Pita, Bryn Ketcher. Exciting to see, what Isabel Lindo does next season. You have some really nice contributions from freshman Aubrey Leonard, of course. So, yeah, exciting times. Like you said, there was progression that we were able to see this year, and it just gets me more excited to see him back out on the court next season.
I think the team for next season, a real good mix of veterans and youth as well. As you said, the players, Bryn Ketcher and Isabella Pita, great contributions to the team. Marie Outlay, Defensive Player of the Year in the GLIAC. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch Marie next year to see how far she progresses. It's funny to say. You wonder how good she can get. You think at times when you watch Marie play now, it's like, can she get any better? But there's still obviously room to grow for all the players on the team.
And the thing is, she's gotten better every year she's played in this program. And, of course, she's been here 3 years. She played at the NAIA level. Her freshman year was the defensive player in the CCAC that season. And then last season had a really good year. She just continued to get better, right? So always about linear progression. And, progression, I guess, isn't always made at the same pace, but we've continued to see her get better, and I have no doubt that she's going to, step onto the court and take her game to a level that we haven't seen before.
And as well, basketball, looking back at the men's season, not quite the season that Dee Brown and the team had wanted, but I think toward the end especially, again, you can see throughout the year, again, progress, a little bit of progress being made, and I know that Coach Brown emphasized all through the season, play to the end, and that's certainly what the team did down the stretch.
Absolutely. There was no moment throughout the season where I had any doubt about how hard the team was working, and that's a testament to Coach D Brown and his staff and the players themselves as well. We're not going to sugarcoat it. The season didn't go how they wanted it to go, and knowing D Brown, he's a winner. He wants to win. He talks all the time about he's in the competition business, right? You want to win games, and they didn't do that at the level that they wanted to this year. But the players at no point did they quit on their team. They fought till the end, and I think that goes to say a lot about the culture that they had within the program, and it gives me confidence moving forward that look, like I said, season didn't go how they wanted it to this year, but when you have a culture of guys who still fight for each other no matter the results of the games that they're playing in, it speaks well for your team, and it also bodes well for the future.
Looking ahead now at the spring sports, and as you said, golf is underway now, and men's volleyball, baseball, and softball, and so far you talked about the spring trip breaks for the baseball and softball team, the spring break trips to Florida, and a little bit of a tough road there, a little bit of a bumpy road for both teams, but I think trips like that over spring break, really great to get a chance for the coaches to see how the team gels, how they handle certain situations as they get ready for the conference season.
Absolutely. We're still really early into the season, of course, and I think that there's so much you learn, like you said, about your team over the course of that week or so where you're playing, tons of games. You're playing, some days you're playing double headers, you're playing, 6 out of 7 days of the week or whatever it is. It's a grind, and it's something that those players go through together. And of course, when the results aren't going your way, then it kind of gets to a point, right? It's make it or break it, and it's important that the team sticks together and trusts in the process, trusts in the work that they put in together throughout the off season. And of course, for the baseball team, for 5 more games this week, of course, playing on Wednesday against Parkside, a conference opponent, but not a conference game, and then they'll have a couple of games in Ohio on Friday and Saturday. So you kind of put that behind you in terms of the results, and you're right back at it, and you have an opportunity to win some games this week.
I remember we talked about it last year with Coach Michelle Alexander with respect to the softball team and the Florida trip. It is a whirlwind. They're there for basically a week. I think it's 7 days start to finish. I know they had some travel difficulties this year getting to Florida, and then when you get there, as you said, doubleheaders every day for pretty much a week. They get 1 day off. They had Thursday off last week, but they had doubleheaders every other day, and I think that kind of schedule really puts you through a situation where you get a lot of experience, so that when you get to the conference season, it's almost kind of a break, isn't it? Because of you've had that 1 week that's just nonstop from start to finish.
It's a grind, and like you said, it's sort of your team faces adversity, right? Even if you're winning games, you're playing so many games for 7 days in a row, essentially, right? You get that 1 day off, but you learn a lot about yourself as a player, about your teammates, about your coaches, and from the coach's perspective, you learn a lot about your players. But I think that's kind of a sentiment that's been echoed from all the coaches, right? You, of course, want to win every game you play. You want to win. You want to play well in the non-conference season. But once you get into conference play, you really want to be hope that you're finding your stride. And so for the baseball and softball teams, of course, a couple more weeks of non-conference play. But then once they get into conference play, they're going to want to be able to hit the ground running.
It's amazing about the scheduling for baseball and softball. Here, the softball team this season began late January with a couple of games at the Dome against Illinois Springfield, and they played a lot of games thus far, and yet it seems so compact because here we are as we tape. It's almost the middle of March, and the season now, you have a lot of things going on in the final 6 weeks as you get to conference play. A lot happens very quickly just because of the compact scheduling.
Yeah, and like you said, for the softball team, and kind of a weird schedule. I know they started really early this year, like you said. They were playing in January, and they had a couple weeks off, and they're playing again, and then they had a little more time off, and all of a sudden you're playing, however many games it was down in Florida in the span of 7 days, and it's hectic, it's chaotic, but I think I feel confident speaking for those players when they say it's exactly what they wanted. They've waited throughout the fall they've been in the weight room, and they've been training and going to practice, but nothing's better than putting on your uniform and playing a real game. So yeah.
And when you get to the conference season, obviously nothing can substitute for the previous experience you have going on those trips to Florida and playing all those quote unquote preseason. I call them not preseason, but they're non-conference games, and that just to get you just more and more experience. And I think it's great prep for when the season, the conference season begins.
Absolutely, it's invaluable for both teams, and especially for the young players on both sides. There's freshman contributors. on the baseball team and the softball team, and we've seen them produce so far. But for those players, it's so important that they're actually getting game reps, right? You can go against your teammates for as many reps as you want, but when you're in a live game and you're going against a guy or a pitcher that you haven't seen in your time in college, it's a completely different feeling. So for them especially, it's so critical to get those opportunities to get those at bats in or to get those innings in. And so I think on both sides, freshmen for both the baseball and softball team, young players are going to be crucial. And especially with conference season, it seems like you said, the schedule's so compact. It feels like the season just started, and yet at the same time, the conference season's right around the corner. So invaluable for both teams.
And I think you touch on a great point as well, that there's no such thing as a substitute for game experience. As you know, I'm a big baseball fan, and when I hear about a pitcher rehabbing in Major League Baseball, going through a simulated game, and that's all well and good, but I also kind of take it with a grain of salt, because there's no way a simulated game in that situation can replicate actually being on the mound. I mean, in simulated game, it's almost like a glorified batting practice. I've seen them in progress, and it's just not the same, is it?
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, I have a lot of experience in my own time as an athlete being injured. And first of all, you learn a lot about yourself when you're injured, but you also learn how difficult it is to ramp back up to game, match fitness, being ready for a game, whatever sport it is. You can train and you can work on your body and your health, and you can be better. You can be, objectively healthy, and you can be practicing continuously for a couple weeks in a row, but then all of a sudden you get back out there and it's real, and you're breathing a little heavier than you were in practice, and the emotions are ramped up even more, and it's exhilarating, but at the same time it takes time to adjust to what it's like going from when you're not playing to when you are.
In your experience as an athlete, did you ever have a moment where you'd been practicing and practicing, and then you get to the first game of the year and you're like, hey, wait a minute, this really counts. This is real. I have to start performing.
When I was playing in high school, I didn't play my freshman year of high school soccer. So my first year playing at the high school level was my sophomore year. And I was super excited. And I made a joke with my coach that, I'm going to score 3 goals my first game. And I'm going to score a hat trick. And, the arrogant, sophomore that I was, really, I believed it. And then I got on the field and, I'm going up against a couple of center backs that are both 6'3", 6'4", and mind you, in high school, at that time I was 5'6", 5'7", 130 pounds soaking wet, so I wasn't physically able to match up with those guys, and it kind of just struck me like, whoa, this is real. We're not just practicing, and I'm not going up against the same guys I've been going up against in training for the last over the summer, and so it's at that moment it was not overwhelming, but it was just kind of struck me in the face like, whoa, this is real.
Well, and that's where the experience factor, I think, really plays into things, because that's the only way that getting experience is the only way you're going to get comfortable on the field. You have to go through those moments before you get comfortable enough where you can play your best, in your case, soccer, but whatever the sport may be for whichever athlete, you have to go through those moments to finally get comfortable and then play at your best.
Yeah, in life in general, you learn the most and you grow the most in adversity, and that it applies tenfold in sports. As just speaking from my own experience, the most progression I ever saw was when I was pushed really hard and going up against the best of the best, and being challenged every day in practice and on the field. And so, in regards to Roosevelt and specifically the baseball and the softball teams, especially for those younger players, just getting those opportunities to even, this might be cliche, but you win and you learn, right? Like, you learn from both winning and losing, but I think that it's so important, especially, again, just to keep hammering the point for those young players. You learn a lot about yourself as a player. You learn about what it takes to play at the college level, the Division II level, from those opportunities like both teams got down in Florida last week.
Turning now to men's volleyball, and their great start to this season continuing for Coach Kelly Magliano and the team. Came back to the Goodman Center last weekend, Friday and Saturday, and were able to split the 2 matches. Unfortunately, lost in the first match, their first home loss of the year, but a really nice bounce back in the second match. Needed to go 5 sets, but they were able to pull out a great comeback win.
Absolutely. I think, obviously we're on this podcast to talk about Roosevelt athletics, but it deserves to be said that Missouri S&T is a fantastic team, and it's a tough way to open your conference portion of the season. Missouri S&T picked to finish second in the conference. They've beaten McKendree, who's ranked in the top 15 nationally. They took a set from Ball State, who's also ranked in the top 15 or so nationally. They're a very good team, and we saw on Friday they're very complete, right? They hit well, they block well, they serve well, they pass well. But we both agreed that we felt that the end scoreline didn't really paint the accurate picture that we saw in the Goodman Center on Friday. Of course, Missouri S&T winning that first set on Friday 25-19. It was a 19-19 game, and Missouri S&T closed that set on a 6-0 run. And then, of course, 26-24, Missouri S&T took it in the second set. Roosevelt kind of ran out of gas in that third set and dropped it. But we both felt that, Roosevelt was right there. And then we saw on Saturday, just like you said, such an impressive bounce back. And they dropped that first set in tough fashion on Saturday, bounced back, won that set. And obviously you feel good winning a set. And then, Missouri S&T came out in that third set on Saturday and kind of took the wind out of the sails a little bit from Roosevelt, really kind of put their, kind of dominated that third set. And then, we were kind of looking at each other like, okay, how are they going to bounce back? Are they happy with just taking a set, or do they want to respond? And they responded.
What was so impressive, as you mentioned, down 2-1, and I thought after that third set might be a tough order to try to come back and win this the way that previous set has gone. But as we've talked about as well in the past regarding volleyball, it can change so quick momentum-wise, and it changed in Roosevelt's favor, and they were able to carry that over into the fifth set. And also one thing that we've talked about a couple of weeks ago, you don't want to go to that fifth set, but if you make it there, Coach Magliano has to feel really great about the fact that her team has been able to pull out now 3 wins in 3 matches where they've gone 5. So you've always got that ability in your hip pocket to be able to pull out a match and get a win if you go that fifth set.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, like you said, I mean, you want to win it in 3 sets every game. Of course, it feels good to win quickly and win dominantly. But you talked first about that momentum and how big it is in sports, but especially volleyball, it can switch so quickly. I think a moment that stood out to me on Saturday, I talked with Coach Magliano after the game, was Ashton's stage. A couple of really nice defensive plays in that fourth set. He had one where he kind of hooked his arm and managed to keep it up. Roosevelt was able to keep the ball in play. And then on, the next hit for Missouri S&T, he had a really nice dig. And she talked about, middle blockers aren't necessarily known for their passing, known for their receiving. And so for him, a freshman nonetheless, to make a play, not just one play, but 2 plays in that moment, I mean, that was maybe the loudest cheer of the game. I looked over at the bench. The players were going crazy. Coach Magliano had a big smile on her face, her arms in the air, and the guys on the court were mobbing him. And in that moment, it felt like, okay, like they're not just happy with winning a set, right? They want to win this game. And so when they took it to that fifth set, again, momentum, they jumped out. They jumped out and really kind of pounced on Missouri S&T. I think they were up 8-3 at the switch, and then credit to S&T, they forced Roosevelt to sweat down the stretch. They got to 14-10 and match point, and rattled off 3 straight points, which forced a timeout. But then I think that in those moments in a fifth set where your backs are up against the wall, both teams are tired, you've played 2 games in 2 days. Who are you going to turn to? It was Mark Smoygin for Roosevelt, the senior leader, a captain, a guy who's been in the program for 3 years now, someone who Coach Magliano has talked about trusting so much. And I don't know if you saw, but the article that Josh Wallfish, our SID, wrote after the game in the huddle, Coach Magliano looked to Martino Bertagnoli, the setter, and said, "Find Mark." And he found Mark, and Mark finished the job. So it was just an awesome moment for the men's volleyball team.
Looking at the weekend as a whole, one thing as well that strikes me is the fact that it was a weekend of comebacks. Not able to win that first match on Friday, but being able to come back and win the second match Saturday. And then within that match, they had to come back again, down 2-1, able to take the last 2 sets. I think that's a real great sign as far as the team being able to mature and handle those tough situations.
Absolutely. And you learn, again, not to repeat myself, but you learn so much through moments like that, right? When your backs are up against the wall. Okay, you're down 2-1 in this match. You got your set, right, that you feel like you deserved on, Friday's game. But is that all you want, right? And especially in the way that S&T won that third set, they were really just firing on all cylinders, and they had the momentum. But especially for, Mark Smoygin is the only senior on this team. And credit to him, he's a great leader, leads by example. But a lot of these guys are, you're starting a freshman at setter, a freshman libero, and young guys who may not have been in moments like that yet. And it helps so much, right? And you said, like, the third time this season they've gone to 5 sets, they've won all three of those games. And the more you get into the conference season, you're going to see these teams multiple times, right? It gets a lot about these teams. You've played them before. The scouting, is more in depth than you're able to do in the non-conference season. So it makes it more of a challenge, but it also, when you have moments like this, it gives you more confidence that they're able to, going to be able to pull out some of those wins.
And we talked about the scheduling aspect during the baseball and softball part of our conversation, and that's something that's a little bit different as well now in the GLVC for volleyball. Last weekend, a perfect example, and it's going to be this way the rest of the season. Play a Friday night match. In this case, the match time was 6 p.m., and you got to come right back the next afternoon. Very quick turnaround. Had a 2 p.m. match the second day. That's something that I got to believe all teams have to get used to.
Yeah, especially for a team, Roosevelt, first time playing in, these times, and you finish your game at 7:30, 8 o'clock on a Friday night. Okay, you're getting to bed, you're waking up, and all of a sudden you're getting ready for another game. And so they're back at it again this week, of course, taking on Southwest Baptist in Missouri, 6 o'clock on Friday, 2 o'clock on Saturday. And so it's almost monotonous, right? You get into this rhythm to a sense, but especially when it's that first conference matchup of the season, right? The first time you're doing it that year, it can definitely be a challenge for both sides. But it's exciting to see how they responded on Saturday, how well they played, and I'm really excited to see how the rest of the season goes for them.
And as you mentioned very briefly before we wrap it up, golf starting up. Springtime is here. We've had some warm temperatures of late. We're in that time of year where the temperatures can fluctuate greatly, but golf as well, teeing it up and looking forward, I'm sure, to a great season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, by the time this podcast comes out, they'll be wrapping up their event down in South Carolina this week. It's making me jealous. I need to find some time to get out on the course. But yeah, excited to cover them. And I know it's been a long wait. I think the last time they had anything was back in October. And so for those guys to be able to finally get back on the course, I know they're excited. And like I said, I'm excited to follow them the rest of this season.
Should be a great season for all spring sports. Well, that'll wrap it up here this week for Making Waves. Cam, thanks for joining us, and look to see you again next week. And to all of you out there joining us as well, thanks for being with us. And until next time, so long.